Welcome to today's webinar. The topic for today is empowering culinary staff and registered dietitians on industry dynamics and applied technology. My name is Meagan Pollak-Harrison, and I'll be hosting today's presentation. Not only is it National Nutrition Month, but it's also Registered Dietitian Appreciation Day. I want to thank all of my fellow registered dietitians for all the hard work you do to support our industry and the residents that we serve. Before we jump into the content today, I want to go through just a couple quick housekeeping items. Reminding you that this webinar is intended for general information, but not legal advice for you. So with that, let's jump into the topics for today. So applied technology. Some may be thinking, why did we pick a topic about applied technology for National Nutrition Month and Registered Dietitian Appreciation Day? When talking about dietetics and nutrition, people often focus on the clinical nutrition aspect, but many of you are responsible for areas such as community nutrition, management, and supporting your food service operations. It's not just that clinical component. So I thought it'd be a great twist to really explore how applied technology can really help support the practice in those many areas. And for just a little bit of background on me, I'm also a registered dietitian, but I went with that little less traditional career path of going the clinical route. And instead, I actually have a background as a software engineer and continue to use that to combine my RD experience to really drive innovation in senior dining. That really is a passion of mine. And I'm excited to spend time with you today to highlight some of the innovations being used for our industry alongside some really wonderful presenters and experts in those areas. So let's kind of dive into what applied technology is. So I think sometimes that can be a scary word for folks or not really understand what it means. I think sometimes when people hear applied technology, they have this vision of very futuristic, high technology everywhere. And in reality, most of us are using applied technology every single day, probably more than we realize that we're doing it. So, what is applied technology? So, from the definition, it is really the application of scientific and technical knowledge that is actually applied to solve real world problems. It's looked and utilized to really improve efficiencies and ways to enhance existing systems that are out there. And how can we take and look at applying existing technologies and using them in new and novel and innovative ways? And so, really, that is the key with applied technology. It is used in the real world, it's not theoretical, it's not hypothetical, can we maybe do this? It's really looking at ways that it can be used in our day to day life to help make it better. So, I want to just quickly go through some of the applied technologies that we're using in healthcare and nutrition services today. So, the first one that I'm sure almost everyone on the webinar today has interacted with at some point are the electronic health records. Another one that became more prominent, really to be used in healthcare in the industry, is the use of the telemedicine tools. So, how did we take the tools like we're using today to have a webinar and add extra pieces of technology for the protections around HIPAA to really use it in that healthcare space? This is one that you're maybe using a version of a smart scale that's automatically loading into that EHR system. Maybe you're using it more on a personal level. I know I have some integrated scales with my Apple Watch and my phone to really track some of my own personal health goals. And then from the food service perspective, again, this isn't really crazy high tech, but just the use of digital menu boards as we are having to flux and adjust and maybe show specials or pivot on the menus that we're using to serve our residents. The ability to use a digital menu board versus having to reprint things out or write it up for your community to see. And then the last example I have is really around data analytics and really some of the power of how we can ingest and take a look at all this data and present it in a way that really helps bring key decisions or problem areas to the forefront instead of having to weed through a lot of different data points. So really wanted to highlight that we are using applied technology, and it's an area that we're continuing to explore, and many companies are looking at ways that they can incorporate it into their organization to really solve some of the challenges that we're facing. And that's where we're going to spend a lot of our time today, is exploring what are some of those big challenges. Often when I'm talking with different folks in the industry, both at the corporate level or the community users that I have an opportunity to work with, I like to ask them, what keeps you up at night? What are some of the things that are your biggest concerns or challenges? And there's three that I've been consistently hearing, and we'll cover those today and how applied technology can really help solve for them. So the first one that I want to touch on that I think is on the forefront of everyone's minds is really around cost control. Since December of 2019, food away from home has increased over 25%. And that's really, when you're looking at the inflation indexes, what our market falls under. Specifically with Rec Supply and DSSI, we're able to get a little more granular into market data and trends. And we've seen over a 10% increase just for our industry alone since that time frame. And when you start taking a look and analyze some of the market analysis, unfortunately, those food prices are projected to remain at those elevated levels versus coming back down at some point. So that is something our customers are often looking at, and folks in the industry, to say, how can we combat those high costs and cost increases and still continue to provide the best meals and dining services out to the residents? And what the technology we're going to look at around that is really a more established technology around artificial intelligence. And I know that maybe doesn't feel super established as a technology, but as far as the three areas that we're going to focus on today, it really is one that has been around longest and been used consistently to help solve some of these problems. The next area that I want to dive into, or we'll spend some time on, is some of the factors that we're seeing with labor in the industry. I don't have specific statistics around food service, but just in general, for senior living and skilled nursing, between 2021, so a couple of years ago, and projecting out to 2040, there is going to be a need to fill over 3 million different roles. So there's a combination that's coming into play with that, with current staff looking to retire. You hear about the silver tsunami and the next generation of residents that are going to be coming into, our assisted living, independent, skilled nursing facilities. So that really is a big challenge to figure out over the next few years, is how are we going to help combat that? And we're going to be joined by Mission Health today to talk about how they're using robots and robotics from a growth technology perspective to really help support some of the staff out at their communities. Then the third area that I hear a lot from folks on what's keeping them up at night, this is a great problem. I love, that resident choice and understanding and really providing that individualized care for the residents. But we definitely have a new generation of residents that are going to be coming in that are different than we've traditionally seen. And they have different expectations on variety and demand of what they're going to expect out of their dining experience. And you compound that with the labor challenges that we talked about in the cost control. We really need to think of the different ways that we're able to provide that individualized experience within some of the parameters and constraints that we have to deal with in our industry in particular. And have a really cool technology, really in that emerging technology space, with a smart cooking device with some folks from Brava that are going to be sharing a really new, innovative way to do some cooking. So those are the topics that we're going to dive deeper into today. So let's jump into the first one on that established technology with artificial intelligence. So what does established technology mean? Really, if you think about that, it refers to technologies that are a little more widely accepted. Maybe everyone's familiar with them. So this may include things like your word processor. I'm sure all of us probably use Microsoft Word or Outlook or some Gmail every single day that people are going to be familiar when you talk about that technology. While I would maybe put artificial intelligence more into a newer version of that, and it still is evolving, it really is becoming integrated into our day-to-day lives. And most people that you will talk to are familiar or have interacted with artificial intelligence at this point. So I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into that. And joining me in that conversation is going to be Catrisse Alvord. She's also a fellow registered dietitian, and she is the Director of Food and Hospitality Nutrition for Mission Health. A little bit more information on Catrisse. She has 20 years experience in long-term healthcare, working in both nursing and nutrition roles. I think having that unique experience in both departments, Catrisse has shared that it really helped shape her belief in providing the best quality care, dining experience to really be able to support the residents and families and employees that she serves. One fun thing about Catrisse is you may see as she's presenting throughout today, she may have a special guest join her with her cats. They like to sneak in. I got to get some sneak peeks of them when we were doing some prep for this. So hopefully they make a guest appearance. And really, I love Catrisse's motto of she likes to work smarter, not harder. I will attest she also works very hard. I've worked with Catrisse for a few years now, but I think it makes her a perfect presenter. I really love as another dietitian in the field, she's really leaning into technology and innovation and how she can use that to work smarter. And again, really in that philosophy to how can she use that to support her residents, their families, and the staff that she works to support every day. So thanks for joining us today, Catrisse. She'll be sharing on artificial intelligence, and then she'll also be jumping in on the topic with robotics. So let's get started a little bit around what does it look like to really support artificial or really control those food costs without the use of artificial intelligence. There's a lot of manual processes that have to take place in manually gathering all of the data. What are equivalent products? So let's look at it of what is the best cost chicken breast that I need to be buying. And then there's other factors into that price. What is the net unit breakdown of that product? What's the cost on the invoice coming into a community? Are there extra incentives from the food distributor or vendor that you're working with? Is there maybe a manufacturer rebate direct that you've negotiated with that manufacturer partner or getting through working with a GPO partner? So these activities are very time consuming. They require a lot of very deep knowledge of the product. And it takes a lot of time to really dig in and go through all that information and data to be able to find some of those savings opportunities. And this is really where artificial intelligence has come in to really help be able to process millions of pieces of data to get accurate product information and find savings opportunities to really help customers in the industry control some of the costs that we're seeing. So if you're maybe not as familiar, I just want to take a few minutes to share an example of how some artificial intelligence models are built that we use to really help customers control those costs and find where there's better opportunities in stocking or savings for them. So really what the AI does is it builds models and algorithms that takes a look at the information pieces. So this is a great example. I have one of apples on the screen. So it can use the language and say, this is an apple. What is the count of it? Is this slices? Is it fresh? Is it frozen? And then it goes in and starts looking at that data and grouping and tagging those like products together. So you can see on the screen that it's separating the apples from the oranges. It's separating the slice and the can from the fresh products. And so it's really incredible the power that this has to do. But just similar to us, maybe when we were first getting into food service or becoming RDs, I think fruit is a pretty easy example. I think as you start getting into cuts of meat or other more challenging bakery products and what the yield is, it's a little bit more challenging to say what is an exact like for like product. And so the artificial intelligence actually has its own level of training and education that it goes through that will go into more detail. But if you look at the artificial intelligence, it really helps solve some of those problems that we talked about on an earlier side. It really can take in all of those products, purchases, what's available from your vendors, what are all of those pricing components and constraints to really help automate and present where we see that there's like products that you can maybe get at a better cost. And then what we'll do is we'll present those products out, and then we'll use smart folks like Catrisse or consultants that really know that space to validate and give feedback that the products that the artificial intelligence said were a match really are truly a good match around that. And then it's also able to take in all those parameters that I mentioned around the cost piece. So what is the true net cost? It helps break it down to an equivalent unit. And then really help you say, here's what the cost is into the building, and then maybe here's the cost after some additional incentives. And that's where it's an opportunity for a customer to really look and see, is that a good fit to move to that better cost controlled item? And really, if you look at it, some of the statistics that we found is customers that are using that artificial intelligence actually end up spending, just with some of the customers we work with, 6% less on food than their peers are doing. So want to talk a little bit, I was focused on the cost piece, but there are also other components that are considered. So is it fresh or frozen? Is it like that way? Is it an equivalent pack size? Is this a brand that I want to serve? As dietitians, does this have the right nutritional requirements around protein or sodium? And we'll be able to take that in and provide the feedback. So Catrisse, I'm going to jump in here and ask you a question. Catrisse, you have been able to provide some feedback into the AI. How was that experience? Was it pretty easy for you to work with that and give the direction? And did you see improvements over time?
Sure. So thank you earlier for the lovely introduction. But yes, so we have worked with the folks at DSSI using artificial intelligence. And you're right, at first, it wasn't the easiest process. There was some challenges with products not converting to a like product. But as far as my ability to easily go through, the matrix of items and give my feedback to the folks at DSSI, it was super simple. I would question, is this product, comparable? They would determine it wasn't, and then they were able to tag those items so that, in the future with optimizations, I wouldn't have to look that over anymore. It would just remember it. So artificial intelligence has been incredibly helpful for us in making those optimizations.
Awesome. Thanks for that feedback. And that's an example you're seeing on the screen here is when Catrisse would provide feedback on why a product wasn't working. We could share that specifically. And then, as she mentioned, it got smarter over time to not represent that. And so here's just a quick graph that is showing where some of the accuracy was at, where it goes to, and how over time it has really gotten closer to just what we've been able to do as humans, but do it in a much quicker time frame and at a higher magnitude of savings than what a person can do on their own to manually go through all the steps that we shared earlier. And so that's great. This is really looking at it from the corporate perspective of making some of the decisions that are the best products to be used in the buildings. And I know we have quite a few folks on here who are working out in the communities themselves and are doing the purchasing. So that's also an important piece of it, is how can the technology really help showcase and communicate out to you. So Catrisse, do you want to share a little bit on how you then use some of the data to communicate out to your communities, the changes that are coming?
Sure. So ironically, I was just doing that earlier today. I got my optimization email yesterday afternoon from DSSI, and I literally just take the spreadsheet and sort the spreadsheet that they send me by the operating company and print it into a PDF that I can send out to share with my team so that they're aware of those changes. Probably the changes go into effect faster than they even have a chance to look at their emails because the folks at DSSI are so quick to make those conversions for us. So, you know, we're seeing that savings almost from the get-go, which is nice.
Awesome. And I think that ties in great because they may be, I know a lot of you that are working in the communities, you're busy, you're taking care of those residents, you're cooking those meals for them. You aren't spending a lot of time at your computer looking at it. So we've really looked at ways on how we can embed artificial intelligence into that ordering process to really help redirect to the best items that you should be purchasing that meet those specifications that were evaluated. Also help with some stocking issues. And so here you can see an example of where the artificial intelligence made a recommendation of a better product to be using. And so I don't want to get into too much detail here because we have a few more topics to get through, but please stay on the end. We'll be joined by Britt Zimmer, one of our product managers, who will get into quite a bit more detail on how this technology is really helping support cost saving for your food ordering and really getting the right products into your communities. So with that, I would like to jump into the next technology area, that growth technology around robotics. And growth technology is that next progression, really where the innovations are going through rapid development. They may not be as familiar or mature. Some of you maybe have gotten to see a robot in a restaurant. I personally haven't got to eat at one yet. So it is a newer concept of a technology. It's definitely new for our industry, but more and more providers are exploring how they can use robotics to help with some of those labor challenges we talked about earlier. So now I'll turn it over to Catrisse to really share how Mission is piloting robots in their communities.
Thank you. So we are piloting robots at Mission Health. We've got a nice little video here of how we're creatively utilizing the robot at one of our pilot communities. So I'll let that play.
It's my favorite. He is programming her for the next stop. Rosie's going to her next stop.
So that's definitely one of my favorite ways that we have found to utilize the robots. But just to give everybody a little background into why we decided to tackle this project and where we've got our robots located at which communities and the size of them. The big reason that we wanted to invest in this technology was just to think of ways, just as Meagan mentioned, I like to work smarter, not harder. So how can we automate tasks, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes? How can we automate tasks with technology that's available? So the easiest way that we could determine to do that in our department was with the use of robotics. So you've got a photo there of the robots that we have piloted in 5 of our communities. We have communities ranging from skilled nursing facilities that are 40 beds all the way up to 104 bed facilities. We've got an assisted living on board that's utilizing a robot. And all of these are located in different states. So for those of you that operate in different states, from a dining perspective, you know, everywhere does things a little bit differently. So we really wanted to get a sampling of, you know, what it would look like in all of our different community situations, and where, you know, using the robot would make the most sense. So we definitely got that with the different communities that we have. Next slide, please. So this slide is one of my favorites. A a lot of people, when they hear that we're utilizing robotics and dining services, feel like we're taking the human element out of the dining experience, which couldn't be further from the truth. The whole point of utilizing robots is to automate tasks versus automating people. For any of you who have worked in food service or are currently working in food service, you know that there is a lot of steps taken between all of the different areas, whether that's the kitchen, dish room, dining room, 2 resident rooms. So between dietary and nursing staff, there's a whole slew of steps that is occurring on a daily basis. So while that's great for our health, that may not be the best use of our time. So by implementing the robot in these situations, we're really taking away, that unnecessary task of walking back and forth between places and utilizing the robot. So, instead of a staff member having to walk back and forth when they're out on the halls because the residents need something during a meal service, whether it's dietary and nursing staff having to truck it all the way to the kitchen to get the things that they need. We've implemented at some of our communities where they've got walkie-talkies or, other ways to communicate where they can actually send their robots out to the hall and eliminate the need of that person with that back and forth motion. So it really is important for people to understand that the purpose is to automate the tasks and not the meal service itself. And with that saved time, the best practice and the best thing is that we can spend more time with our residents. We can spend more time maybe doing other tasks. So when we talk about it from a labor perspective, we're always asking our folks to do more with less time. This frees up some of their time to be able to do some of those additional tasks that we're asking. So here are some additional photos from our different locations. And I just realized that I forgot to mention all of our robots have names. So while, the technology and the robot itself is meant to be used as a tool, we've definitely had a lot of fun with it at the community level, whether that's the music that the robots play or the names that have been given to them by the residents. We had all of them vote on their robot names. So we've got Rosie, we have a Roberto, we have a Zoe and a Jeannie. So we've got some definitely creative robot names going on there. But some of those tasks that we have automated include meal delivery into the dining room. So, this works particularly well if your kitchen is attached to your dining room area. So instead of, a human having to walk those plates back and forth, the robot can do that delivery for you so that, your service staff can stay in the dining room, refilling drinks or, assisting residents. Meal delivery with room trays. If you have a small number of room trays, you can fit several on there. As you can see in the photo, we've got 3 trays. Obviously, that doesn't work for every community, and that has been some of the, the barriers that we've come across. But if we're really trying to push people to be out into the dining rooms and that socialization aspect, then, hopefully our meal delivery to rooms is few and far between. And then as you can see there in our third picture, we've utilized it for extra deliveries. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, looks like we've got a resident who's requesting some milk and cake as a snack, maybe between a meal, and we're able to send that out on the robot versus, having to have a human being walk that stuff back and forth. So again, it's all about saving those steps and conserving energy. Got a couple additional fun photos here. So we really encourage the communities to utilize their robots for activities. So that was the video that we saw, the first video. We have Rosie, the ice cream truck, and she helps the activities director deliver ice cream to the residents between meals. In these photos here, we have one of our pilot communities doing a birthday celebration with their robot. The robot actually had the happy birthday song uploaded onto it. And, it was able to sing happy birthday to the resident. I know we don't have all the pictures, but this resident's face, we have a video too. I mean, just completely lit up when the robot was delivering her birthday surprise. And then on the right side of your screen, you'll see one of our hula robots. So one of the communities had this idea of dressing their robot up for an activity. And I mean, as you can see with the picture, it's just, adds another level to what we're doing and is really something that's enjoyed by the residents. So I really encourage them, whether it's a monthly thing or for holidays, we're always trying to jazz up the robots, whether it's dressing them up or uploading different songs or sayings. So there's a lot of cool flexibility that makes it not only, a helpful tool, but something that helps brighten our residents' days. So this slide shows just some of the words that I asked all of our pilot communities to submit to me. And I created, this word cloud. And the coolest thing about all of it, of course, is at the center is our residents. So, the residents really love and are proud of, being a part of this pilot program and doing something different and innovative. I've had some wonderful experiences when we've been implementing the robot, seeing the look on the residents' faces and the things that they say. At the end of the day, the hardest thing is the change management with the staff. But I can tell you from a resident perspective, which is where most people are concerned, they love it. People that visit love it. So it's definitely been a fun addition to our pilot communities at Mission Health. So I was asked to share some lessons learned and tips for success. So obviously there's going to be all sorts of things that I could throw out at you, but my big keys to success are, number one, if you're not already doing tableside dining, the robot is going to be very difficult for you to implement at your community. We did have some communities that weren't at the point where they were doing tableside dining just yet, and they have been the ones that have struggled the most with utilizing the robot consistently. Community leadership buy-in is incredibly important. When I speak about community leadership, I mean all the way from the administrator to the dietary manager to pretty much all the department heads. It's very difficult for one person in the building to be responsible for making sure that the robot is utilized. For my dietary managers out there, you have a million things going on. The goal of this technology is not to cause additional burden, but we all know that change is hard. And so, that leads into the next one, staff acceptance to change management. You're always going to have staff that think new ideas are super cool. You're always going to have those that kind of just join everybody else. And then you're always going to have your naysayers. In my experience, if we have strong community leadership that are willing to move forward with the change and can see, the opportunities and the ways that it can make the residents' lives better and even the staff's lives better, then your staff are going to follow as far as change management goes. In addition to that, it's really important to have good communication, training, and of course, enforcement when you implement something, especially something that's different from the way that we've always done things. So communication wise, we would do a lot of in-services with staff when we rolled out the robots, and not just the dietary staff or the nursing staff. It was all staff in the building present so that they could become familiar and comfortable with the technology, ask questions. Same with the training. That's always ongoing. We still have calls quarterly to talk about, issues that they're having or ways that we can provide additional training. And then, of course, enforcement, just making sure that the staff at the facility, the community leadership are making sure that it's used consistently. We started our first community out in February of last year, And we actually had a call yesterday and still talking about there's still staff members that aren't super into utilizing the robot. And we talked about, it's going to take years probably to really change and make this the way that we do things moving forward. But they have been one of our most successful communities, and that's because they're consistent with their enforcement of the robot's use on a daily basis. So we've had a lot of fun with the project, and whether this is the end all be all of technology, I'm sure it's not. They're going to keep coming out with, better models that do more things. So it's cool to be on the forefront of that, and with a company that supports doing that. So thank you.
Insight, Catrisse, and I think that's exactly why we put that into the growth area as far as technology is concerned. As you said, it's ever changing as far as what the manufacturers are doing. And in addition to just enhancing some of the software or the models of those service robots that we were talking about, they're looking at how we can use robots for other tasks within the community. Again, I have an honor to work with a lot of different folks within the industry. And one I hear a request for a lot is a dishwashing solution. So again, I'm sure the folks at the community, I know that is not a favorite area to always work in. And it's sometimes hard to get that staffed up. So there is those robots out there. I looked at the price point. It might be a little high for our industry, but hopefully as that technology emerges and grows and becomes more common, it will be at a price point that we can use for our industry. And they're looking at ways that robotics can help with different cooking mechanisms. They have a fryer robot, a pizza maker, a chef who can tailor to very specific recipes, or even a robot that makes sandwiches. And this leads us into our final technology topic, really highlighting some of the advancement in technology with smart cooking. And so the topic today with the Brava oven, I really put into the emerging technology. And the emerging technologies have the ability to change really the status quo and how we think of things. And this really hit me as the concept of how is there maybe an existing technology that's out there, but it's really infused with a new and novel way, a new and novel technology embedded into it. And that's where I'm going to welcome Travis Ray and Zach Selmon from Brava, and they're going to showcase really this cool new emerging technology in the smart cooking space. So just a little bit of background on our speakers. Travis is the vice president of Brava. He brings over 20 years of experience as a seasoned marketing and culinary professional. He really likes to bring those areas of expertise together for product development. He's used it from e-commerce to fine dining, and kind of fellow person after my own heart, really launching innovation in culinary products in the dining space. And then that really where his passion seems to lie, and how can he delight customers and make cooking easy and accessible for all individuals. Then he's joined by Zach, who is their director of product management at Brava. Zach also kind of took a creative career path similar to myself. He was first a creative writing major turned a product manager, and really has spent the last 20 years figuring out how to intersect that digital content with emerging technology. So two really innovative minds joining us today. He brings that expertise into the kitchen, also to figure out how to make ways to cook faster, easier, and more delicious than ever. And little fun fact, it sounds like Zach likes to showcase his magical powers with his kids. So Zach, hopefully you can showcase some of that magic today as you talk about the technology with Brava. So with that, I'll turn it over to the two of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, Megan. And it's a real pleasure to be here with all of you guys today. I think what I first wanted to start talking about was a little bit about smart cooking technology and what that means. Because, even I think 10 years ago, I didn't know, and I have a professional cooking background, but there's a number of things that have really evolved over the past decade with AI advancements and other things to help people cook safer and easier at home. So some of the key features with smart cooking technology are: one, automation. We are automating the cooking process. It doesn't mean that people aren't touching the food or interacting with the food, but the hard part of cooking with the flames and everything kind of goes away when we start automating it. There's also always an integration with some kind of mobile app. And then another aspect of kind of guided cooking, where we're giving instructions and tips and tricks kind of along the way through the process. So there are a lot of different categories of smart cooking technology. Brava happens to be sort of in the oven technology side, but there are other kinds like cookers, and there are smart grills, air fryers and dehydrators that are connected to apps, induction pans that are connected to apps. I even recently saw a smart cooking pan that had a thermometer built in underneath the metal part of it that could be controlled, or that would control the gas range. So really, really cool advancements in technology going on here to make cooking a little bit easier. We can go into the next slide. So I'll tell you a little bit about Brava. Brava's, like I said, just one little piece of a larger trend of smart cooking technology that's happened over the last decade. But what makes Brava unique is that it's the only countertop oven, other than the Easy Bake Oven, that cooks with light. And so what the end user has to do is select what they want to cook, either on the touch screen or the mobile app. Then they load their tray with the food, season the food, and press the green button. And the rest of it is fully automated for them. It automatically shuts off. And we can go into the next slide and we can tell you a little bit more about how it works.
So as Travis mentioned, we consider it an oven, but when you think of traditional ovens, they generally behave by using a heating element to charge the chamber of the oven with energy that then is cooking the food. But it's a little bit limited in terms of how dynamically it can change temperatures. So it takes a while to preheat, takes a while to cool down. And they usually top out at about 500 degrees, which isn't hot enough to get a sear on a steak, for example. What's really cool about Brava is that it cooks with light. And so if you see in the animation on the side, it uses these 6 lamps oriented as 3 on the bottom and 3 on the top. And it's hard to see here, but they have these specialized reflectors. And so you think about it as if it's cooking with a spotlight, where it's focusing all of the energy directly into the food instead of the chamber walls. And that gives us a number of benefits. The first, and probably most important, is that because all of the energy is going directly into the food, we can safely access a much higher effective cooking temperature. So it's closer to 900 degrees rather than 500 degrees. So we can do things you'd normally do on a grill, like get a real sear on a steak, and it means we can cook much faster. The other cool things about these lamps are that they reach that full power in just under a second. And when they turn off, there's kind of minimal residual heat. So when we turn it off, it kind of stops cooking. And we don't have to have any preheat. So it gives us very fine-tuned control over how dynamically we and how precisely we apply the energy to the food. And then the last kind of cool benefit is, back to the spotlight thing, the lamps are oriented into 3 independent cooking zones. And what that allows us to do is, on a tray, we can cook in those zones independently. So you can set up a tray with steak in one zone, potatoes in another zone, and then broccoli in the other zone. And by pulsing the lamps at different power levels for different amounts of time, we can start by searing the steak top and bottom, and then letting that rest as it comes up to temperature, then start roasting the potatoes, and then lightly roast the broccoli at the end, and coordinate all of the different pulses so that all of the food comes out cooked independently and ready to go at the same time. So all that's kind of the difference in terms of how we use this heating technology. And then as a smart technology, it's all driven by software. We have over 8,500 recipe presets that Travis and our chef team has programmed in so that it'll be perfectly cooked each time. You can access it via an app. There's a camera in the oven so you can see what you're cooking. Beyond that, we also use the camera to help provide customer support and improve the experience, because we can track all of the telemetry data from each of the cooks, so we can constantly improve. The oven's still capable of doing, the traditional manual modes. You can still bake like normal. You can reheat, you can air fry, dehydrate. Additionally, because it's connected to software, it's always getting better. We can push new recipes and software updates, so we can even add new cook modes over time. It's fully, you can customize and personalize your preferences. So if you always like your steak medium rare, you set that up. It'll remember how you like that and build it the next time. We have all kinds of fun community features where our community can build their own recipes and share them with each other and communicate with each other to kind of build up the recipe library. And using the app, you can even remotely monitor your cooks, so you can see, you get notifications when food is done. You can watch what you're cooking from your app. You can even stop the cook if you need to remotely. And so all these things kind of combine to give you this kind of ease of use and peace of mind. Do you have anything to add there, Travis?
No, I think it's mainly that the ease of use and peace of mind, I think, translates into confidence and cooking confidence. And I think what that allows people to do is people of any cooking skill level can cook really restaurant quality food at home or in the senior living facility without having to really know how to cook.
You don't have to have the timing exactly right where you're juggling, waiting for a preheat. If you don't get the food out right when it's done cooking, it turns off automatically, so you don't have to worry about pulling it out. It's not going to keep cooking or burning. It's just a way to, like you said, feel more confident in how you're cooking.
Yeah, and it's not exactly a robot, kind of like what Catrisse was saying, but it's taking these elements of automation and hopefully making a process more consistent, more reliable, and a little bit safer for people at home as well, with no open flames. So we can go to the next slide, and I can tell you guys a little bit about sort of how we got here. Brava was launched in 2018 and was never intended specifically for seniors or assistive technology. It was really a direct-to-consumer business. We went into online retail and dealer expansion a couple of years ago, which introduced us to senior living. A couple of senior living consultants came through and saw Brava and reached out to us. And so I worked with one of them for a while, and we actually got a few pilot programs going, one of them in Concordia Life in Oklahoma, the Blake in Daytona Beach, MBK also has Bravas. And then leisure care, and they're all using them in different ways. You can see on the bottom left here, one of them has Brava in sort of their model apartment, so that when people come and are visiting and trying to see if that's the right facility for them, they're trying to help entice the people to come stay with them because of investing in applied technology like this. On the bottom right, you can see some of the dishes that the MBK has created using Brava, because you can create your own recipe programs as well. So those are some of the actual dishes that they're serving to people, like flatbreads and salmon, and really kind of vibrant colors here. And then leisure care in the top right picture here is using Brava to host community events and educational events to bring people together to get excited about cooking and eating and community building. We can go to the next slide. Zach, I'll turn this one over to you.
Sure. So like Travis is saying, we didn't originally plan on this. And kind of once we started selling it, we started hearing stories from, we heard from, an older couple where they'd been together for 50 years, and the wife had done the cooking through their whole marriage, and she had a stroke and was no longer to cook. able to cook, and the husband who'd never cooked was ordering takeout, and his children got him the Brava and let him start eating fresh home prepared meals again. And so as we started digging into that and talking to people, we realized that there's a bunch of these benefits that we hadn't anticipated relative to kind of how the Brava works. Some of the safety ones, the automatic cooking process, the automatic shut off, kind of helping it's still cooking, so you're still getting that sense of pride and agency, but some of the more fiddly bits of getting the timing right and not having to flip or stir things or worry about getting right to the oven in time to pull something out is really helpful for people. Being able to have access and remotely monitor things, having clear guided recipes. We have done it in, small tiny homes and ADUs where you don't want to have a full kitchen and deal with a hood and other things, but in a kitchenette style place, because putting this in here lets you do all the things you would do with an oven, but also can replace the need for a stovetop, because you can cook fried eggs or make a grilled cheese, a lot of the things that you would normally do with a stovetop in a safe, easy way. And the other scenario that we've been seeing it a lot of interest in is with caregivers. So at memory facilities or places where you have caregivers that are busy taking care of people and interacting with people, you can have food set up, and maybe a non-culinary caregiver, all they have to do is put the food in, press the button, and there's that kind of ease of mind, having the unattended cooking aspect of it and the untrained cooking aspect of it lets them still provide fresh, cook to order type meals in situations where they wouldn't maybe be able to do that as easily. I think we have
a lot of that has to do with resident satisfaction too, Zach, because I think one of the things that we've heard from seniors when they go into some kind of facility as a resident, they're giving up a lot of independence and they're giving up some autonomy. And we think that the smart oven technology is one of the things that can help safely bring that back to them in a meaningful way, because we all eat, and it's one of the most universal things for all humans. And it's important. And so I think if we can get that right and have people have a little bit more control, not only over the cooking process, but what they're putting into their bodies, because these smart cooking devices really excel when you're using fresh whole foods. And so there's a health aspect to this too, and a wellness aspect that's really important. And I think, Meagan, we can probably go ahead and play this really short clip from Teresa Black, who's the dining coordinator.
I like the convenience, the quickness. All you have to do is just follow the directions and your food is made within 10 minutes. I like my steaks medium rare, and they come out perfect every time. I think it could be great on several things. We have some people, some residents that's on special diets. They can't have certain seasonings. They are gluten-free. They sometimes don't want what we have on the menu. So this would be a perfect example for them to cook whatever they want.
Awesome. I think we can advance to the next slide.
So we mentioned some of the examples of how we've currently been integrating with existing facilities, but like we mentioned, because it's Wi-Fi connected and we can update the software, there's all kinds of other things that we've been in discussion or excited to dig into more. So working with people to, I think I mentioned having maybe a culinary staff that's working certain hours but can pre-prepare meals on trays, and those meals can be preloaded onto the oven. So all you have to do is slide the tray in and press the button. We can integrate the recipes directly into the menu system or tie into a menu ordering system. So users could potentially pre-select the meals they want for the next week, so to reduce food waste by tying that in. We could tie into diet and nutritional goals to guide meal suggestions and tracking. We've even looked into scenarios where you could have vending machines or kiosks that have pre-filled items or full trays that would communicate directly with the oven. So someone could select something and just put it into the oven. They wouldn't even have to make any of the selections. It would just pass it directly there. We've been working a lot on assistive technology and AI stuff. So we're currently using the camera in there for some basic machine vision stuff to improve the cooks. But we're also working with the Lighthouse in San Francisco to set it up so that people that are blind or have visual impairments can leverage the voiceover technology on their phone to be able to basically get all the instructions and just set up it on the cold tray and push it directly into the oven and not have to worry about dealing with open flames or hot pans. Conversational AI for just talking to the app for meal planning and suggestions. Even being able to just take a picture of your food and have it dynamically send the cook procedure to your oven. We could even work with one of the robots that we saw earlier to have it deliver a tray and open the door and pass the recipe directly to just set up the cook that way. Some of the other cool things that we have going is that every meal cooked in the Brava, we get the analytics data from all of that. We use that to improve both the recipes and the interface. But in a group situation like that, we can use that for more predictive analysis of meal orders and food trend based on the cooks that people are using, and tying into nutritional goals and tracking and selectively encouraging certain recipes to help people maintain their nutrition goals. And then, as Travis mentioned, like a big thing for us isn't just the food itself. It's that people enjoy cooking. You get a sense of pride and accomplishment and community. And so community building things, planning out, I mentioned all the recipe sharing that we have. So we could have recipe sharing and discussion. We could do virtual cooking classes, coordinated potluck where each person takes on a different recipe and coordinates it that way and shares the food with one another. Because that kind of community aspect of not just eating together, but cooking and sharing the experience is something that I think is really important for all of us. So fun stuff to play with.
Wonderful. Thank you both for really sharing the unique technology that Brava provides to the senior living industry. I really love the highlight on the fresh quality food. We talked about the challenges with the labor and how do we meet those individualized needs of the incoming residents that were coming. And I think this is really an innovative way to think about that, and really how we're combining some of the robotics with the smart cooking technology to really look into the vision of what senior dining could look like. So really appreciate that insight from Catrisse and Zach and Travis on how they're all really embracing technology and looking to drive innovation. All right, so Catrisse, I'll start with you. The question I'll start out with is, what has been one of the most surprising responses from the residents that you've gotten about the robots?
Sure. So I don't know if surprising is the right description, but it was heartwarming for me. So when we implemented or rolled out the first robot at one of our communities, we were testing it out in the dining room, I think at a meal service. And this one resident was just precious. She pulled out her cell phone so that she could call her son to let him know that a robot was delivering her supper that night. And she just thought it was the coolest thing ever. So it's reactions like that, from the residents where they want to brag to their family or friends, about how their facility has a robot. And just embracing that technology and not being scared of it, that has been really fun to see.
That's awesome. I think that's a really great point that you had hit on when you were sharing some of your content, was that, some people fear or think that the robots are going to take away that human element. And instead, it's taking away some of those monotonous tasks that are requiring a lot of the energy suck. And so now it's actually bringing more energy, both with the residents and for your staff, to really help with the engagement during mealtime. So I really love that story. Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
All right. What other questions do we have for our panelists? Okay, so we'll keep it with you here, Catrisse. If you could have a new robot to help with any task for you or your communities, what would it be if you had that dream robot?
Well, I think you showed a slide of it, and it's the one doing dishes. That is probably the number one thing. I know when I have to do dishes, I'm like covered from head to toe in water, and it's a mess. So having the robot have that ability to, safely and effectively wash the dishes and take, that task that is nobody's favorite task, so that they can spend more time maybe front of house interacting with residents, or, doing other things, that'd be super cool. Or even cleaning robots, right? So basically all the things that people don't want to do in the workforce. I think, the more the merrier on robots that can do those things.
Awesome. Lucky for you, there are some of those dishwasher robots already out there. So hopefully it becomes an accessible technology for our industry. And this is, an area I like to explore a little bit more. Stanford's actually doing some studies on robots that are replicating human movements. And that's one of the first things that the robots are testing around, is actually on cleaning surfaces and helping with the busing, not just that the robot shows there and you still need a person to do it, but they have the arms that are actually mimicking human behavior to really replace some of those less desirable tasks that we're asking some of our staff to help out with. So I think maybe your wishes are closer on the horizon than you may think, Catrisse. So I wish I could make those promises, but that's not it. All right, here's another one. How is the robot programmed?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So initially what happens is the folks from the company that the robot comes from actually send a technician in with the robot, and they map the space. And all that really means is they push it around and they're mapping the whole area. So the entire community. We did, the kitchen, the dining room. We went down resident hallways, and they're mapping the space to identify, of course, where the robot can and can't go. And then that map is what the robot runs on. So, we were worried at the beginning because, I'm sure like a lot of people, we've got older buildings, maybe the Wi-Fi and that infrastructure isn't great at the facility level. And you're like, cool, we're going to add another piece of technology, trying to pull off of Wi-Fi. How's that going to work? But the robot runs on this mapped space that is kept, up in the cloud or wherever it's kept. And so it actually doesn't have to be connected to Wi-Fi. The only Wi-Fi connection is to upload the data, and it stores it, in the robot. So for instance, if we had an instance where the Wi-Fi didn't work for a week, they could still utilize the robot, and the data was uploaded when Wi-Fi connection was available again. So it's a pretty simple process. And the cool thing is, with like technology changing, if we want to swap out for a newer model, they can utilize that old map. So it's not something that they constantly have to replicate or change. They just do it one time, and then they're able to manipulate it remotely on the map moving forward. So pretty simple process, really.
Wow, thanks for that insight. I think that is one of the more nerve-wracking things for folks, is how long does the programming take to make sure it's not running into residents or bouncing off the walls. So
yes.
Do you see it working well in smaller buildings with 30 residents or less? And I guess I could toss this one to Catrisse first, and then I can also ask Zach and Travis that same question. So Catrisse, why don't you take that one for the robots?
Sure. So one of our pilot buildings, and the one who has been the most successful, is a building that actually the actual census is 30 residents or less. So even though the building size is, 440 residents, we all know some places census has been a little bit lower than we'd like. And they have been the ones who have really just been rock stars and have done a great job with implementing it in their building.
Awesome. Thanks for that insight. And Zach and Travis, maybe I'll change the question just a little bit and bring you into the Q&A with us as well. Do you see a ideal size of a building or the number of residents for really the technology that works with Brava to work the best?
Like, I think we were talking about the fact that we've already seen multiple different use cases, right? So we see people using it in like satellite kitchen situations or in shared use areas where maybe caregivers or other people or even the residents are using it in a shared space, or in individual resident rooms. And so the number is kind of irrelevant for those situations. Obviously, the kind of the future deeper integrations that we're talking about, if you're trying to do deep integrations with dining programs or the menu systems, or getting some of the more detailed kind of analytic data on ordering processes, that kind of stuff scales broader at broader levels. But just from a usage standpoint, I don't think that it really matters how many. It scales kind of from 3 people to 300, right? 3,000. So
yeah, I mean, I think our hope is that it becomes, over time, as ubiquitous in residents' rooms as a microwave is today, because it's so much more capable than a microwave. But we know that this kind of technology takes time to adopt. So
absolutely, that's why I plugged you guys into the emerging technology space, because it's definitely not one that most people are familiar with yet. I've been doing a little research myself, asking folks if they've tried it or heard about it. So another question has come in for the both of you. What is the capacity of the Brava oven, and how many servings can be cooked at a time?
that's a great question. I'll take that one. The capacity, it looks small when you take a first look at it. It's about the same size as a desktop printer. What you have to understand is that when you cook with light, it's a totally different process. And so whereas in a regular oven, you need to have ingredients spaced apart so that the airflow will move between them and not crowd it. In a light oven, as long as the ingredient is seeing the light, it's getting cooked. And so the tray, although it looks small, holds a massive amount of food because you can crowd it in a way that you can't do in a regular oven. To give you another, a better answer, we can cook up to a 6-pound chicken. The only thing I believe you can't cook in Brava is a whole turkey. You can cook turkey legs, you can cook turkey breasts. It's not big enough to fit a whole turkey, but definitely big enough to fit up to a 6-pound chicken. And the servings question is also a great one. It's because of the technology, we have the ability, I'll give broccoli as an example. We have those 3 zones on the tray. You can choose between 1 zone, 2 zones, or a full 3 zones of broccoli, but it gets better than that. We figured out that you can actually do 2 trays at the same time of a lot of these vegetables. And so you can do 2 full trays of broccoli at the exact same time, 2 full trays of potatoes and things like that. So it can produce a pretty great amount of food, much more so than it looks on the surface.
Awesome. Thanks for that insight on the capacity. Yeah, it's great to think of how you can get creative with increasing it for what the size of the Brava oven looks like. Someone asked, what were the cooking methods that Brava can take on? I know you had shared a few of them in the presentation, but I know it's pretty substantial. It seems like it can replace a lot of the different appliances that probably many of us have our own personal kitchens today.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool. We have the manual mode. So we have bake, we have an air fry mode, we have a slow cook mode, and we call those emulations because it's not actually doing the same thing. So like baking, the chamber is not actually reaching those temperatures, but we figured out algorithms in terms of pulsing the lamps so that it will cook as if it was that, so that you can translate a recipe that you would have, normally for a baking recipe to throw in there. But it's more about the types of things that it can cook. Anything you'd cook in an oven, on a stovetop, in an air fryer, you can do in the Brava. So you can even do omelets and poached eggs, all the way up to searing filet mignon. You can do a lobster tail in one zone and a filet mignon in the other, and do surf and turf concurrently. So you can kind of cook anything. You can't it doesn't reheat a coffee cup the same way as a microwave does, but anything else it can pretty much take on.
Yeah, it can do dehydrate as well, slow cook, rice cook,
make rice,
keep warm. There's so many functions, and it will just get better. That's the cool thing about Brava, is what it is today will be different from what it will be in a year. So that's the exciting part of it.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to just put the fantastic content together. Catrisse, really the innovation and forward thinking that you're bringing with the robotics into our communities. And Zach and Travis really leaning in and looking at ways that you could take a technology that was serving our consumer market and getting really creative to bring those individualized and just really fresh unique meals to help get those residents eating exactly what they want as we're looking into the future of senior living dining and continuing to elevate it. So that's all the time we had for Q&A today. Now turn it over to our product session that is going to be led by Britt Zimmer, one of our technology product managers that I get the pleasure of working with at DSSI. Britt really is our guru on artificial intelligence, and she really brings a wonderful insight into it around how it can really help, especially in the food service space. So I'm excited to welcome Britt today. Britt also has some favorite fuzzy animals of mine and a beautiful little girl that I know she spends a lot of time with outside of figuring out ways to help really drive cool new technology for all of us in the senior living dining space. So Britt, I'll turn it over to you to jump in on really how AI is helping with the purchasing process in food service.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Megan. And thanks for the nice notes about my family. They're really important to me. I've been in the AI space for about 4 or 5 years now, specifically in senior living, and have been really trying to figure out how to use artificial intelligence in the food service space. Catrisse and Meagan did a great job talking about OGM.ai, which is really our first area of generating savings super directly to our senior living customers. And we noticed the impact there on spend management. And to give a little bit of context about DSSI, we have our e-commerce platform, which is really driving spend management patterns through compliance. So we know contract compliance is critical. We also know when you create your order guides and your formularies, having your facility purchasers, and for those of you facility purchasers on the phone as well, knowing what to buy to be compliant is pretty critical. So we have been integrating our artificial intelligence into that e-commerce platform. This is just a quick highlight, but a couple of different areas that we recognized AI could really help drive that compliance and the spend management, and also the fill rate and the fulfillment for the suppliers are areas that we targeted for artificial intelligence. So the first area on our e-commerce platform that we recognized, especially during the pandemic, is when this was becoming quite critical, as many of you all know, is the out of stock selection. So we know not every item can be in stock all the time at every supplier's warehouses. And we created an alert in our shopping cart to let the ordering users know, hey, by the way, this item is out of stock. And not only that, but we also gave replacement items using, again, that artificial intelligence right to those ordering users to reduce some of the load on the suppliers from the sense of, oh no, we don't have this item, what should we sub it with? And give more peace of mind to those ordering users to know what is going to be on the truck when it comes what is that better replacement quantity that better fits what my residents need, and just have more control over what you're ordering in your cart. So we use artificial intelligence to provide those recommendations when an item is out of stock. Again, increase that fill rate for the supplier, increase that control and peace of mind at the facilities to know what's coming. The other area that we have been working on is the discontinued items. Food is so volatile in both pricing and availability, and this is really hitting on that availability piece. So when an item goes discontinued, if you're ordering for your facility, you might know that exact supplier product number that you typically order has been your tried and true for several months or years even. And if that item goes discontinued, now you have to restart that over. So for discontinued items, we have the same replacement functionality. Again, we're pulling from artificial intelligence to reduce a lot of the workload on you all and just provide you, hey, what is that on order guide item? So you can still be compliant, but again, know what's coming on the truck and know what you should be ordering. And then the last area really hits on, I think, what Meagan and Catrisse were talking about earlier with the change management of, hey, we optimized our order guide, everything looks good. And now how do you push those changes to the facilities to know what to order so that we actually can realize those cost savings? So that trigger is the off order guide. If you're ordering something off order guide, again, DSSI really tries to drive compliance. So we'll note that and show the ordering user replacements to drive them to compliance and bring that spend down, as we assume we will do with those optimizations from the AI. If we can pop to the next slide, just to show you how these replacements are getting filtered up to our e-commerce site. Meagan touched on it earlier, our OGM platform. This is really where you can create those order guides and manage them. We do utilize the structure from OGM into our e-commerce site, so you have some control or some influence into those replacements that we're recommending. We also take what the suppliers have provided us. So, your food broadliner has what they would deem equivalent items. We'll pop those up to the ordering user as well as an option. And then lastly, like I mentioned, our artificial intelligence is really the backbone of a lot of these replacements. It's consuming the former two areas for equivalence and also has been trained for over 3 years, specifically in food and specifically in healthcare, senior living. So the recommendations we feel very, very confident about with that large amount of training. I think Meagan shared a really nice graph earlier showing that acceptance rate of just over time, seeing those recommendations get better and better. And we're continuing to work on that as well. We know, like I said, food's super volatile. There's always new products, always prices changing. So the AI will form with that as well. And just a quick preview of what this looks like in our search and shopping cart pages and shopping lists as well. We're trying to integrate as much of these replacements from AI into our e-commerce site as we can, knowing that different users like different experiences, whether that be within the shopping cart, within the search, shopping lists, on deck, order history, etc. Just thinking through what that best workflow is for all of you and your purchasers at the facilities. And then lastly, I'm trying to be quick here. I know you guys all have things to do here, but I wanted to just hit on the impact that we're making with these replacements in our e-commerce site. For customers that we've had the stock out replacement turned on for, we've reduced the unfulfilled stock items by 48%. Again, when you think about your facilities, knowing what is actually going to come on the truck and having control over that, and also a lot of labor reduction for the suppliers, hopefully a really well-rounded solution that 48% is driving towards. Additionally, we've reduced non-compliant ordered lines by 13%. Again, driving that compliance, driving that spend management and costs down. And then lastly, reducing discontinued repeated search by 20%. We recognize that the searching behavior of our users before the replacement technology would require them to search a couple of times to get to the right product, and we've reduced that by 20%. So really excited for the outcomes that we're able to drive with artificial intelligence, and specifically around spend management, driving those costs down for an industry that really could use it right now. So thank you so much for the time. And I think I'm handing it back over to Meagan.
Awesome. Thank you, Britt. And really appreciate that insight. As you said, just the amount of reduction in researching or not getting the product. I know we have a lot of folks that work on the communities listening in on the webinar today. So hopefully those of you who have been able to experience some of this technology, it's really helped you in your operations, save some time, pivot where you're not able to get an item. And Britt, I know you said if you have other ideas to reach out. So as part of the follow-up, I know there were some questions we didn't get to, so we'll try and answer the questions. And Britt, if you're okay with it, we'll share your information or a generic email where they can submit some of the feedback on some of those workflows or other areas that they could really use the help. So thank you again for your insight and your continued work in this area to really help our industry out. So just to wrap up, I know we had also spent some time talking about the robots. So if folks are wondering how they could get them, we do sell some of them through direct supply. There's 2 different models today I have here with some additional information where you can reach out around that. Really the biggest difference between the models that we offer today really are on the size. So the Servi Plus is a little bit wider. Catrisse had shared, they're used for room service. So how many trays can go out depending on the size of your community. And with that, they have different weight and payload. Otherwise, the battery life, how they're charged and controlled remains the same. So it's more around that capacity in the difference around them. And I know there's some interest in some of the pricing. So here is a little bit more information, just if you're curious where that comes in on a total price, maybe where that relates to some of your labor. We just wanted to include this quick as a snippet. So if you were curious, please reach out to the folks you work with at Direct Supply around that. And with that, that really wraps up our time together. Thank you for joining us. Again, really a great appreciation for all that you do. I know I gave a shout out specifically to the RDs for being National Registered Dietitian Day. But I really want to thank everyone on this call. I know sometimes what we do can feel like a thankless job, but I know the residents and their families really appreciate all the hard work and thought that go into really thinking about the dining and nutrition needs and the joy that it really brings to each of them on a daily basis. So thanks for all that you do. Thank you for your time today. And I hope you all have just a really wonderful, fantastic rest of your day.